fine.
Yes. So just so that everybody knows, the video camera in the back of the room is recording our session. The way that it records, obviously it's only going to be the back of you, although it does look like it actually does get your back. But just so you know. All right. So I'm going to call to order our meeting. The first order on our agenda is the approval of our meeting minutes from the May meeting. Has everybody had a chance to review those? James sent them out earlier.
I'll make a motion that we approve the May 8th minutes.
I'll second. Oh, John will second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right.
Oh, that's my copy.
All right. So the next item on our agenda is public speak time, and my understanding is that tonight there are folks here for that public speak time. So if you are here for the public speak time, if you could raise your hand. Okay. And then going from back to front, if you could say your name for the record. Make sure you say it loudly and slowly enough for Jamie to get it into the record.
Patrick Goodrow for Angelique Bacillo. I represent her on a housing matter. So we're here today about the parking. This is Angelique Bacillo and her mother to the left.
Okay. So everybody here except for you two is here for the public speak time. Okay. And then,
David Powers.
right, and,
Money Powers.
okay. So before we have the public speak, because I, both last month and then again this month, I got a little bit of background that there was an issue that the building inspector was having with respect to trying to enforce the decision that we made dated September 19th, 2013, with respect to amending or granting a special permit to permit the operation of a massage studio in the commercial building on Holyoke Street. And before last month's meeting, I had reviewed the decision and I was prepared to come in and suggest that the board consider a clarifying amendment to that decision that I think would address the issues that I'm hearing about from the building inspector. And so before we have public speak time, I want to just brief my board on this issue and what I was thinking that we might want to do, and we can decide whether we want to do that, and then we can go ahead and have the public speak time. And at that point you can address anything that you want to, what we've just done, anything from before that. But I just think that it would be I think it would be nice for us to be able to consider that sort of first, because the issue that the building inspector has, I think, can be addressed by a modification to the decision that would be consistent with the law that allows for modifications where there's been an omission. So, as we often do, we've granted a special permit without a drafted drawing of the property, just because it is yet another burden to coming before us, and we try to not have it be so burdensome to come before us that people just decide to do it anyway without coming to us. So the building inspector had some concerns about the parking, how to enforce the parking. And our decision, when I reviewed it, I realized that we did not put as a condition the parking, even though it was very clear from the decision that essentially the parking was a condition for us. We have in the decision that the apartment building requires 5 parking spaces, and the massage studio is similar to a beauty salon, and so 6 spots would be needed. And then so the 11 existing parking spots are sufficient for both the commercial and residential uses. But we didn't actually put that in as one of our conditions. And that, I'm sure, is my oversight when I put together the decision. And so what I was thinking to do was to modify the decision to add that there be the 11 spaces as a condition, since clearly our deliberation, we conditioned the approval on that, and it was our understanding that there were 11 spaces. So I move that we so modify the decision to insert an additional condition in the condition section that just picks up on that language from the discussion section of the decision. But I don't know whether other people have.
No, I
thoughts on
agree,
that.
and I have been I went to the site before last month's meeting, and I believe there are 11 parking spaces there.
Well,
think-
regardless of the number
Yeah,
of spots,
but-
we clearly
Right,
thought that there
but
were 11.
there were 11.
Yeah.
And so I read the minutes, and I agree with you. I think that's a good way to resolve the issue.
Yeah.
All right.
And the decision that was made was based on the information that there was 11 spots.
Right.
Right.
Based on the calculation of
Right.
the multifamily and the massage.
Right, and in terms of adding that as a condition, I think we should reference, I don't know off the top of my head what the section is, but I know that there's a section in the ordinance that covers what is a parking space or how parking spaces need to be. So we can just pick up that as the definition of parking space and just pick up our language about 11 spaces, but turn it into one of the conditions that's listed. So I move that we modify the decision to clarify the decision. The standard, just so that everybody knows before, considering my motion, is that our power to modify is limited to situations where the correction does not constitute a reversal of a conscious decision and does not grant relief different from that originally sought and does not change the result of the original decision. And so long as no one relying on the original decision has been prejudiced by the correction. I don't think that any of the things before the and would be affected in this case, and as far as reliance on the original decision, to me that wouldn't be, relying on that not being a condition to me is not particularly a concern, because if it's a problem for there to be 11 spaces, I would consider that our board was lied to, that there were 11 spaces. And so I don't think it being prejudicial on that account is something, is what that language is really talking about. So that's my, okay, so I move that we amend the decision in that way.
I'll second your motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. So that'll be, second that.
I remember we talked about the plan.
Fran, second.
I second
Yeah, I remember that
it. I
conversation.
remember talking about the parking.
Yeah, that was.
I know, because we did the math for
Right.
5 minutes.
That was a
We kept running out of fingers.
big thing, yeah.
Okay. All right, so now that we have taken care of that, you'll have the public speak time.
Guess I stand here, it's a little small. Patrick Goodrow. So, by way of just how we came about this, although I think you might know now, was that Mr. Chillo came to Easthampton after realizing the massage parlor was there and the hours were 9 to 9. People were parking. Actually, this can probably give you some pictures. I didn't give copies for everyone, but the business card for location is the same as the house. So there are people who are occasionally coming to the house, although that's separate from the parking issue. Just underlies the problem that she's been having with people coming in and out. As you can see in one of the photos, there's actually a black car. This is two of the spots are basically directly to the side of the house, facing Holyoke Street. They're adjacent to Holyoke Street. Those 2 spots are directly under her children's bedroom windows, and I believe in the zoning bylaws it requires 5 feet from the side for a parking spot. So that, as well as the 2 spaces that were initially mentioned as the garage spaces, which are not used as parking, and which I spoke with Joe at the building inspector, agreed that the garage should not be considered parking spaces for the business. Basically, just the problem is that the 11 spaces were said to be had, and there does not appear to be 11 spaces at the residence. That there's people coming in and out at 9 o'clock at night in her, right below her children's windows and outside of her home. Just request maybe a solution could be a tenant and a business side, so that they don't have to have people going directly under their windows.
I don't think that, my understanding was that the building inspector felt like our decision, because we didn't make the parking a condition and didn't, do it in that manner, which we, as I just described, was an oversight probably specifically on my part when I typed up the decision. I don't know what other relief we can offer at this time. I don't think that our zoning ordinance,
In section, I have this as well, it's just a little quote from 12.742. It says, any misrepresentation of any kind can be a cause of action. And here, I believe the 11 spaces is that misrepresentation, which does give you the authority to go as far as revoking the permit. I believe that is correct.
That's a special permit. Or
Right.
it was a
It is with a
special
special
permit.
permit.
Right. Can I ask a question?
yeah.
Has your client ever considered parking her car under her children's bedroom window so that other people can't park there? And then there's one car, it's there and it's not moving.
Yeah.
Okay, so first of all, I have a handicap placard, and so there's supposed to be very specific guidelines that go with that. He should be having a sign up, he doesn't. But in regards to that, that doesn't eliminate the problems. That would be me violating the 5 foot from the house.
Well, no, the
So-
parking, that pavement was already there, so that was a pre-existing non-conforming condition, so that can't be changed. If it was paved before they asked for this approval.
You're not,
I
I think you're not hearing what I'm saying correctly.
I'm gonna back up for a second. We can consider this on a written application, and we don't have a written application before us. So what I would say is what we can do tonight, we have done, and you can certainly, once that modification is made, you can follow up with the building inspector and go from there. It is a condition of the special permit, so if the building inspector determines that there are not 11 spaces, that would mean that the conditions for the special permit are no longer met.
Okay.
He's already determined that. He had a talk with me over the phone, and he said there's definitely not. He even
Which
talked
is
to-
fine, but I can't take your word for it, so.
Okay. Just letting you know, that's all.
Right, like, I think, you know, my concern was making sure that the building inspector has the tools that he needs to do his job. And I believe that what we've done tonight gives him that tool. And obviously, you know, if it doesn't resolve it for you, the next step would be something in writing for us to consider in, you know, a more fleshed out manner. So, I think unless you want to back.
No.
Can I
Does
respond
anybody
at some
else want to
point?
Yeah, let's take a picture of that. Okay.
I would like to look at them.
Sure. Just Google Maps, you can have them if you like.
And before we end public speak time, I want to give you guys an opportunity to speak to if you would like. But I do want to make sure that we move on to the folks who are on our agenda in a somewhat timely fashion. But you certainly are welcome to speak.
Can I respond?
Yeah, sure.
So when we applied for this permit, we were considering the garage spaces as parking spaces. I spoke to Joe Feidenkevich as well, the building inspector, and he said that those shouldn't have been included because they can be blocked. Someone can park in front of them, and therefore they wouldn't be considered a parking space. So if that's the situation, then there is only 9 parking spaces. However, he also told me that there's an ordinance that you have to be 5 feet away from the building. Those 2 spots that are next to the building are not wide enough for that. We have to go a little bit farther wider. So I spoke to Joe Feidenkevich also about putting an extra parking space in the front and on the side. I have some pictures as well.
So I'm going to stop you here. I am so not qualified to determine what is a parking space and what isn't. Like, I feel like that's for the building inspector to decide at this point. Like, because I'm not there. I don't have a tape measure. Like, I can't do that factual assessment. And so that's why what we wanted to do was to just clarify things to give the building inspector tools. So I think your next step for all of you is to maybe go back and talk to the building inspector about what's necessary to have the parking be in compliant with the decision.
Can I just mention that there are 11 spaces without the garage spaces? They're not all asphalt, but they're there.
Like I said, clearly there's a dispute of fact here, and we don't have the tools right now to resolve that, nor do we have a procedural reason to be resolving that. You know, it's certainly, if, you know, there is a procedure for asking us to do, you know,
Right.
more than we've done with respect to the decision, but it is something that does require something in writing. So
Okay.
clearly we can't consider that tonight.
Perhaps next month or whatever.
And so, you know, stay tuned for the next development. I don't know. But I'm hopeful that what we've done tonight will at least make it so that you can all have more productive discussions with the building inspector than you've been able to have thus far. So, and thank you all for coming out.
Thank you.
Good luck, Bob, with whatever you're here for. Nice to see you. I'm in Northampton, but not far. Glendale Road. Okay.
I'd say when we cancel our phone, all we have is the cell phones. Now I don't have my book marker on me.
There are no spaces.
I
You got a pen?
Because I went up before last month.
We never used
I
it.
don't-
It was no reason. Just
Without
don't
the
need to wait
garages.
in. Don't need to wait in. Don't, yes.
I'll give you a ring. Okay, do that. Good seeing you.
Yeah. All right. This is more how it normally is.
Yeah.
Almost
Well,
finished.
it should, I mean, you know,
We
you
don't have
follow the
parking.
procedure.
All right. So dog grooming. Let's see. Did you want to say?
Can I
Yeah.
just, I just want to bring it to light
Yes.
that I live on Brook Street,
Okay.
so, you know,
So maybe you're going to abstain from voting on this one?
not that I feel I need to, but, you know, there's no. there
We've
doesn't
got
have-
enough people that you could, though.
I could.
Like, how awesome is that?
That is a rarity in his own sense. So,
Then go ahead.
But if you want to, like, you know, go home, I feel so guilty that last month it went on and on.
and Jen sat in the parking lot.
Yeah.
An hour and
We
a
can
half.
give her a
his
ride
wife-
home. She out there now?
No.
His wife was in a parking lot an hour and a half.
Oh my God.
Which, were you kidding, John, you know?
She's a
Well,
patient
there was only one
lady.
thing on the agenda. That's like darn chickens.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Well, we'll just. But I wanted to bring it to light. You know, not. But,
Thank you.
And not that I feel that I'm going to be
Right.
biased in any way, but yeah.
Cool. Did you want to, I mean, we've all read your application, but if you want to start by, often applicants start by sort of summarizing it just to get the ball rolling, but
Oh, okay.
if you want to.
It's a dog grooming business. It's going to be a part-time business. Probably 1 to 3 dogs a day,
Mhm.
2 or 3 days a week. Uh-oh, that's not a good look.
It just decided to shut down on me.
Did you run out of battery? Did it doing an update?
It did an update,
It just does that, yeah. Isn't that awful?
so,
Did it warn you?
nope. So all of the notes that I hope that were saved just from
Yeah,
that.
next time, maybe Google Docs. Obviously.
Yeah.
Anyway, well, we've got the video and.
Yep, I'll go back and
go with the
probably have
video.
video.
All right. All right.
So it's not a kennel, it's not a daycare. Dogs are not going to be there for extended periods of time, no overnights.
They come in, they get clipped, and they go home
That's
Yeah.
it. In and out.
after they pay.
Yeah.
The only comment I have is I think enforcement of the 1 or 3 dogs a day and 2 to 3 days a week would be difficult.
Yeah.
So I assume that if we assume she did 5 dogs a day, 5 days a week, would that be acceptable, even though that's not her intent? But that way, there wouldn't be an enforcement issue. I mean, trying to count which days she's having dogs come in and not.
Right.
I think it might be
I mean,
easier if it's,
Yeah, I mean, my bigger issue is that I hate the zoning ordinance with respect to home occupations, and I'm having a really hard time seeing how, in good faith, we could grant this given the, I mean, I know it's not like one of the specifically enumerated things on the prohibited home occupation list, but like generally our drill on these, because, you know, we get them not infrequently, is, you know, we look to see whether what's being, you know, if it's not one of the ones that's specifically permitted, we, you know, try to assess whether it's more similar to things on the permitted list than it is to things on the prohibited list. And
But there is dog grooming as a home occupation on Holyoke Street, right down the street from where I live. It's sign out front called Small Paws.
yeah, well,
I'm assuming it got permission.
I would not make that assumption
Well,
necessarily.
I walk by it all the time. I mean, I live down the street and I've never seen, it's a rear lot, so,
Right.
but I've never seen
That would actually
I've
be
never seen a car going in or out, even the people who live there, so it's really not a real active place,
Can
I'm
we-
assuming.
Can we find out whether they got a special permit? Is that possible?
I have a list of permits that have been held for the last while, but I don't know.
It was
Yeah.
there over 2 years, it was there when I moved
It's
here.
been there quite a while.
Yeah.
Do you want me to grab that and look it up
I
now,
mean,
or
if-
do you want to?
I don't know, I would find it
Okay, let me-
illuminating.
Okay.
I mean, we're not really bound by precedent, but, you know, if you're gonna go out on a limb, it's always nicer to do it if there's precedent.
Because a lot of these home occupations that are permitted, people come to the house.
Right.
And so it's not that. The things that aren't permitted are more retail or manufacturing. That's how I went through this, other than the barbershop beauty parlors.
Yeah, I mean, I'm seeing barbershops, beauty parlors, and I'm seeing animal hospitals or kennels. Now, admittedly, hospitals often probably do keep animals overnight, which is a way in which they're like
Right.
kennels, but they also are, you know, people bring them for an appointment and then leave, and
But
that's,
like, I take my dog to a groomer,
Right.
and you don't hang out there while your dog's being groomed.
right.
You drop it off and you pick it up. I have a collie, so you pick it up several hours later.
Could I think our biggest fear is that we don't want to be confused with a kennel.
Right.
Because we have no intention of overnight
Right.
boarding
It
dogs
would
or,
I have no
you know,
idea.
having dogs around that would maybe be
Try
a nuisance or
160
create noise
in
at night.
Holyoke Street.
It's strictly a daytime from like
Right.
8 in
112.
the morning to 4 or 5 in the afternoon, so.
Right. Well, and I'm also noticing that none of your neighbors seem to be particularly
I've
concerned because
talked
they
to
are not.
most of
You
them,
have,
and
okay.
they don't, their concern was the overnight barking dogs, and I've told them that the dogs are not outside, they're in my house.
Mhm.
If they're outside, they're on a leash,
Mhm.
coming in and out of the house. So I did speak to most everybody
Okay.
that's in my general area.
That's good to know.
And they all got notification.
They did,
of the
right,
yeah.
meeting, too, and
Quite a
And they
few
got-
approached us, actually.
I know
Yeah.
when I bring my dog to get groomed, I drop her off at 8 in the morning, and usually I pick her up at noon. Like, just some Labradoodle, so it's a little
Takes a
Labradoodle.
while.
I mean, no,
Well,
they're
and
just
so if
small
we look
dogs.
at the home occupation
Yeah, the dead
uses
people
that
who
are
don't are human.
permitted, you know, a dentist, an optician, a physician. You know, not to say that this is along those same lines, but it's
Right, but then I'm seeing like the like analogous thing to those in the animal world is.
But an animal hospital, you go, there are multiple people there. I mean, and multiple dogs,
That's-
and
okay.
a hospital doesn't have one proprietor. A
Right,
hospital
people that
has
work there.
the vet and the receptionist and the animal techs, and it has multiple animals, and they do surgeries, and the dogs are often there overnight when they do surgeries, or at least all
Right.
day. It's
Yeah.
just, it's
Yeah.
very different than a
Okay.
groomer.
And it's just
I'm
gonna be
I'm
me.
liking your argument.
Yeah.
And I mean, here I go to, where I used to live, I went to a groomer that was in a retail shop, and you went in the back door, I mean, it was in a little shopping plaza, and it was not, I never saw dogs barking outside.
So can I just ask a question
Yeah.
of when these,
Doesn't, it has got a
Allowed-
sign out front.
Yeah, and
I mean, this is only until 2010, the records that I have.
yeah, but
Um,
I think we've got institutional memory that.
And then between
2010.
2010 and 2012, this list isn't updated, and then I have the files for
Right.
everything. But I've been here for, and there's nothing.
Yeah, no,
I think it's been longer than that, because that house was built quite a while ago.
I don't know, I've only lived here 2 years.
Yeah.
I know it was there.
What would your proposed hours of operation be?
8 to 5. So I guess my question was, when you pick which types of businesses are allowed and which aren't, what's the determination? Like, why is a...
We didn't write this.
Okay.
If we had written this, it would be really different. It's one of the frustrating things about our job here is that, and not just this part of the ordinance. Like the whole ordinance needs to be revamped. You know, it's over 20 years old now, and it's been sort of like individual problems have been addressed here and there, but it really could use a comprehensive revamping also that would bring it maybe more into alignment with like
What goes on to-
what goes on, and also like how other municipalities handle things, because I feel like in certain areas where specifically home occupations, actually, like I'm a little bit familiar with how some of the other towns do it, and I think we tend to be a little bit more draconian than some of the others, which I'm not a big fan of.
No, you said your hours would be 8 to 5. What about Saturdays or Sunday? You're talking Monday through Friday.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I figured.
I don't want to work for
It's, no, it'd be good for our
Been there, done that.
it'd be good for our record and our write-up too.
Yeah. So I guess part of it is that I would assume that most people on my street will be at work when I have people coming to the
Right.
house.
How many, you were saying like you were thinking 1 to 3 dogs over the course of a day.
Yeah.
Would there be multiple animals there at one time, or would it be one animal at a time?
I would prefer one at a time. I mean, there could be some overlap just in a sense of somebody dropping a dog off and then
For like
picking
5
a dog.
minutes. Or
Yeah.
Because I mean that's the other thing that we had talked about when we've talked before about like what's similar to like a barber shop or a beauty parlor versus some of these other things was that a lot of times, especially when you're thinking of the era in which you actually use the phrase beauty parlor, you're thinking of people sitting there for a while, and so the concern is that there will be multiple, like many cars there at the same time. And it sounds like in that way what you're proposing is much more similar to the type of professional who maybe sees one client at a time.
Maybe limiting it to 2 kennels. Because you put
Births. Or like the box.
yeah.
boxes, 2
Yeah.
kennels inside, because that's when you bring your dog in. If she's working on someone else, they put the dog in the kennel, and while they're waiting to pick up, they put the dog in the kennel.
Yep.
And that would be a way to limit the number, and that would,
Yep.
so she could still do her 1 to 3 dogs a day, but
And that
if there
lets
was
you
an issue.
schedule easier too.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
I don't want 4 dogs dropped off at 8 o'clock in the morning.
Right.
Because I'm going to have to babysit 3 of them
Right.
when I take care
Yeah,
of them.
no.
I should say
The
kennels,
one
I'll say
dog.
crates.
Yeah.
Maybe that
Yeah.
clarifies it, crates.
Yeah, don't use the word kennel.
Right. But that'll help you for booking
Yeah.
purposes too. You don't want to have 4 dogs in the morning. You can't get to 1 till 2,
Yep.
2 in the
You
afternoon.
don't wanna see a dog stuck in there. that
Right.
long.
No,
So that's-
no.
You're not gonna be a storage facility.
No.
Your dog
We leave that to the father.
Alright.
Well, how many parking?
The 4 in the driveway. There's
Okay.
space for 4 in the driveway.
And if the dogs have to go out, they have to be on a leash.
Yep.
And since waste disposal is one of the things we have to consider, you'll just scoop the poop?
Yeah. Lots of plastic bags.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have almost 2 acres of land too, so it's a good sized lot.
You have enough lot to walk them over there, or
Yeah.
Yeah.
put them on a leash over there, a little ways.
I think at one point our lot was actually the animal control facility for Easthampton.
Oh, really?
That's a
Long
barn
time,
out by
yeah.
there.
That's funny. That's like,
Yeah.
that is funny.
Hence our dog wouldn't go in there.
Yeah, she didn't like to go in there.
Are you gonna
Oh,
have a
she could like smell
sign?
the stress.
What's
Are
that?
you gonna have a sign?
I would just like to put a very small sign, but I think it said in
2
the,
square feet?
yeah.
That's why someone went on Hoyle Street got approval. Someone checked it out, and I think it's 1 by 2.
Yeah. So they must be.
I mean, it's possible that
Oh,
it didn't
okay.
get into
So they
this
just
list.
end from the road.
I take no responsibility for
I
anything that
mean,
happened
you
before.
were here when the person came
I
who
like
did
the
the small
street.
engine repair.
Yeah.
and
Yes,
it's like the
that was
whole
like my
issue.
first meeting.
Right, so like,
We
he
might-
had a sign for
By
years.
your place a lot.
Oh, okay.
Like,
there's a lot of things.
There's no enforcement, really. Like, this is,
Unless somebody complains.
unless somebody complains. Which is why, like, it's good that you've talked to your neighbors, because really, I feel like what our role is to, I think, facilitate people using their property in the way that they want, as long as it's not in conflict with the zoning ordinance, and as long as it's not gonna, be detrimental to their neighbors. And so, the types of things that we're supposed to consider when considering a special permit for home occupation are parking, which we've just talked about, waste disposal, which we've talked about, hours, like nuisance issues, so like barking dogs, but obviously it's going to be for a limited number of hours and also a smaller number of animals. And would you sell like grooming products or anything? No. And you'd have no employees.
No.
And your sign would be consistent with the
Yes.
sign ordinance. And it is a small portion of your home that would be used for this purpose. Dentist? Like a dentist? All right.
I do brush their teeth.
It's such a, it's like such a weird list, and there's like so much, I don't know.
It's very arbitrary.
It's like arbitrary, and I feel like there's a lot of like classist baggage with the list that like makes me really uncomfortable. Like, if you're somebody who charges a lot of money, then you can do it, and if you're like somebody that, provides a service that like, people, like regular people can provide that service, like you're told no, and I really don't like that. Like, to me, it's like, I don't really get why beauty parlor would be on the forbidden list, but like, lawyer or architect or accountant or like all of those. Like, it's just.
I didn't. It's like every time somebody applies, do they?
It's like, do you need a license? Like, do you need a like? But beauty parlors need licenses too. I don't know the whole thing. Now, are there any like rules about having licenses for operating dog grooming businesses? No. Okay.
The Board of Health and the Planning Board both returned that they had no comments on this.
Okay.
And no issues with it.
Okay. Good to know.
That's good.
Thank you. And there's nothing at like the state level for. Okay. I'm feeling pretty comfortable with this. Shall we go ahead and make does somebody want to make a motion? Do you want me to make a motion?
You wrote the notes, you
I
can
wrote
make
the
a
notes.
motion.
Okay. I want to put something in here just to address like the refuse, about like how refuse will be disposed of. Do you have any suggestion for like? Because you were saying maybe walking them further back on the property, but you were saying
I would pick up,
Okay.
and I have a designated container to put.
So that would just go to the residential.
We have a trash
Private
pickup.
hauler.
Yeah.
Yeah, do so waste comes by to us.
Yeah.
I guess also the fur too. If you are trimming them in any way, you have to dispose of that too.
Dispose of that.
We shot back, and then I put it in a
Bag it in.
bag. Yeah.
All right. So.
That's good. Janet, you're sure?
So let's see.
You got a dog?
No.
Animal refuse will be collected daily and disposed of weekly by private hauler? Or it doesn't have to be by private hauler, but disposed of weekly.
Yeah.
Removed weekly, I should say, probably.
Smells.
Their house is far enough from anybody else unless they put their trash can on the neighbor's property line, which I'm sure they don't.
I don't.
Yeah,
The
that's
neighbors
not.
use
Yeah,
that.
I'm not too worried about
That's
that because they could have 3 dogs that are there all the time. Like, we don't have a limit on the number of dogs. That doesn't. I don't. That's not a concern to me. I don't know how other people. Yeah. Like, if you were talking about wanting to groom 10 dogs a day, maybe that would be a concern. But I have a friend who lives in Northampton who does operate a dog boarding business out of her home. And
boarding?
and one of the funny things that happened when she was before their zoning board to get her permit was that they realized that there's no like upper limit on the number of dogs that you can own. And she could theoretically own 5 dogs. And nobody would be able to really do a darn thing about it.
There's no limit, huh?
Yeah.
I would think it's like a hoarding issue.
That's like Northampton. Well, I mean, I think that, you know, like if there's a problem, then
Yeah.
the Department of Health can get involved. But if there's not a problem, you know, well, what's the problem? Anyway. And interesting. Okay, so I move that we approve a special permit to allow the operation of a dog grooming business at 28 Brook Street, subject to the following conditions. That all the grooming is to be done by Elizabeth Starr. The hours of operation are limited to 8 to 5 p.m. Monday through Friday. There are only 2 crates can be in use at any given time. Not to include any like, that's 2 crates for client dogs. That wouldn't include the crate for your personal dog if you crate your dog, if your dog's crate trained, or dogs. All dogs are to be on a leash while outside of the home. All animal refuse is to be collected daily and removed from the premises weekly. And there's to be a sign in compliance with the zoning ordinance, no more than 2 square feet. And no products are to be sold on the premises.
I'll second it.
All in favor? Awesome. Yeah, and John is abstaining from the vote.
That on record.
Abstain.
What luxury. We live in luxurious times.
Yeah.
All right, thank you so much for
Okay,
coming.
thank you all.
So I'll write up your decision.
Okay.
And then it'll go to the clerk, and then there's a 20-day appeal period before it becomes final.
Okay, great, thanks.
Great,
Thank
thank
you.
you. Good night.
And I move that we adjourn.